We are live. Isn't that exciting? Another Wednesday. I don't even know if my camera's lined up properly, but it really doesn't matter because we're live. We're doing all the things. You can actually see half my face. Do, do, do. All right. We got all the lights on. We're good now. We're live. All the above. Cripes, I'm tired. But today we are talking about what causes weight gain. Now, I guess the causes of weight gain and some of the ideas around why individuals gain weight, there is certainly some confusion, some misconceptions, and I don't want to say like poor ideas. I don't know what the right word is. It's not coming to me right now. But when it comes to weight gain, is it really as simple as this whole idea of calories in, calories out, or is there something else that's going on? What exactly is the whole dealio with it all? So that is what we're going to dive into tonight. And we'll kind of go over a little bit of that and some of the bits and pieces around there. And then, as always, at the end, we will take all of the questions around weight loss, weight management, and you name it. So I hope everybody is doing well on this Wednesday evening here in Calgary, Alberta, and wherever else you are in the world. Let's get into it. When we're looking at weight gain and fundamentally what is occurring there, so why do people gain fat? Why do they gain weight? Fundamentally, the reason why we gain weight is because of what's happening at the level of our calories in versus calories out. So when we narrow in and we kind of just go down to the bare bones of it all, the gaining of the weight is because the calories that are going in, so the calories that we're taking in from food, are greater than the calories that we are physically burning on the day-to-day basis. So over a 24-hour period, if you eat more food and more calories than what your body burns in that same 24-hour period, you are going to gain weight. Now, in order for weight gain to occur, it's not just one day. It has to consistently happen again and again and again, day after day after day. And that's ultimately what drives and leads to the weight gain. Now, what we're talking about here is weight gain due to fat gain, so being in a calorie surplus. Yes, our weight can go up and down due to various other reasons, such as fluid retention in the cases of having heart failure and other comorbid conditions. It can go up and down because you're constipated or having diarrhea or have some other kind of illness. So there's other reasons that you can gain and have weight shifts that are not related to your calorie intake. But when we're talking about purely from the fat gain perspective, it is because the calories that are going in are greater than the calories that are going out. Now, again, when we kind of take a little bit of a deeper dive into, well, it can't just be that easy. And yeah, it's not that easy. I mean, thermodynamics and the law of thermodynamics, yes, that seems very simple and such. But there's all kinds of factors and things that are going to influence that calories that are going in and also those calories that are going to be going out. And so we'll start with some of the medical comorbidities that can certainly have a role. We can talk a little bit about medications and stuff. And then I'll kind of touch on, I guess, some of the patterns that I see in terms of patients and in helping and supporting people and that sort of thing. So in terms of medical conditions, some of the big ones that are pretty easy to kind of identify and think about would be conditions such as hypothyroidism. If you're not producing enough of your thyroid hormone basically regulates your metabolism. Having a low thyroid output and function is going to mean that your metabolic rate, or how many calories, or the calories that are going out, are ultimately going to be decreased. And so if you were doing fine and your weight was stable, then you develop this hypothyroidism. So the calories that were going out and that you're burning start to go down. Well, suddenly your same amount of food intake, the calories that are going in, are going to then be greater than the calories going out. That's going to contribute to weight gain. Another medical condition that commonly we talk about is things like PCOS. So PCOS, or polycystic ovarian syndrome, kind of a bit of a misnomer, if you will, because you don't necessarily need to have cysts on your ovaries to have PCOS. But this is a metabolic abnormality that is due to hormonal fluctuations and changes, leads to insulin resistance, changes in your testosterone, progesterone, estrogen levels, and that sort of thing. We don't really have time to kind of go over the complex physiology that is involved with it. But a condition like PCOS doesn't affect the metabolic rate or anything like that. What it more affects is your cravings and that drive and wanting of food. So it's going to increase how much food you're eating, sometimes on a very subconscious level, and get you to be, well, it'll kind of make your brain really like the apple pie over the apple, or like the apple pie more than someone who likes apple pie a little bit, that kind of thing. Sorry, again, it's the evening, ADHD is kicking in full force and whatnot, so we're having some problems with word finding. But PCOS, hypothyroidism, those are kind of two quick, easy, off the cuff conditions that I often see that certainly can contribute to weight gain and can affect that equation of the calories in versus calories out. Now, getting away from, say, medical conditions and just looking at kind of environmental factors and even learned behaviors and that sort of thing. So if you had learned throughout your childhood and kind of, into your more later years and such, that food was a way to comfort, a way to cope with high stress, high emotions, and that sort of thing. Well, then when you have those kinds of stressors later on in life, if you haven't developed other abilities to cope or to manage those feelings and stuff like that, suddenly food is going to very much become an easy outlet for you to try and make your feelings feel a little bit better, right? And unfortunately, it's not going to be the plate of broccoli that you're going to be craving. It's going to be those high fat, salt, sugar, the foods that taste really good. Again, that apple over that apple pie. So things like that are also going to contribute. Further, we have all kinds of advertising and messaging that is constantly being beat against us, that is showing us and influencing us in how we eat, how we behave, what are the cravings that we have. And a lot of times it's this subliminal messaging, right? You might see a commercial, or you might have been driving down the road on your way home from work, and there's a billboard that you pass by that was, I don't know, for Pizza Hut or something like that. And suddenly you get home and you're like, oh, I'm craving pizza. But you didn't even register that you saw that billboard. It was just that association that your brain had created. It reminded you of pizza. That started the trigger in the cascade that ultimately then created the craving. So that's a whole other kind of environmental factor and piece there that is going to influence the foods that you're eating, the cravings that you're getting, and that sort of thing. And so sometimes even changing the route by which you, say, drive and go to work or what have you can also potentially play a role in your cravings and in the foods that you are going to be wanting and striving for. It's very fascinating, all the biology and the things that we're kind of discovering in this regard. And yeah, so that's kind of some other factors there. Then we're getting into the weeds with, like, socioeconomic status and how fast food and highly processed foods are much more expensive than, the whole foods at the grocery store. The proteins in particular are extremely expensive right now with inflation and everything like that. So suddenly we're going to have a whole population who can barely afford groceries in the first place. Well, they're not very well going to be having the whole good old protein-based foods, and they're going to go for those more highly processed foods, which have been engineered to ultimately get you to eat and consume as much of them as you possibly can. Basically, they have found the way to engineer these foods to hijack our brain. And when we do studies, there's actually a really very elegant crossover study that was done where they got a group of people, split them into two. One group was told, here, you can eat all of these. Here's all your food. It's all prepared for you. You sit in this metabolic ward and stuff like that for a period of time. And you're given nothing but whole foods. So made from whole ingredients. So chicken breast, rice, broccoli, that sort of thing. You're given all these foods and you can eat as much or as little of it as you would like and kind of go on your way. And I think they followed them for a period of 2 weeks. Then in the other group, they were basically given nothing but processed foods. And again, told and given this information to you can consume and eat as much of this processed food as you want. And then what they did is they weighed the people at the end of it. They gave them a washout or a break period of about 4 weeks between, and then they crossed the group over. So the group that was in the processed foods then went and had the whole foods. The group that had the whole foods then went over to the processed food group, and they then repeated this whole process again. And what they found is the individuals that were eating the processed foods compared to the whole foods group, they were actually consuming 500 additional calories per day. And this is just being told you can eat as much or as little as you'd like. There's no limit or anything like that. But just because they were given the processed food options and such like that, they were just more inclined to consume 500 calories more in comparison to that people that were consuming the whole foods. And what they found is that the people who consumed the processed foods gained, I think it was, I want to say 2 pounds or 2 kilos or something like that. And the people that were consuming the whole foods menu and stuff like that for the 2-week period actually lost weight. And so that's a really elegant study to kind of just show the power that is processed foods and how it really they have been designed to hijack our brain and to get us to eat and consume more of it and as much as possible without us really even realizing it, right? You're just given the option to eat as little or as much, and your brain just says, nope, take another bite, take another bite, take another bite, even if you've gotten the caloric needs that your body wants, and you should be good to go and should be able to go away. But the food is hijacking the brain and getting you to eat more and more. So another really kind of just fascinating and interesting example in the role that it can play in how our body regulates that calories in versus calories out kind of dichotomy, the right word, kind of relationship, I guess you could say. So again, it goes back to the foundation of calories in, calories out. Similarly, if we're going to lose weight, the calories out have to be greater than the calories that are going out or going in, sorry. And ultimately, there's going to be a great number of things that are going to influence it. And that's just kind of some of the examples. I have gone into a little bit more detail about some of these topics and ideas in my previous videos, so be sure to go and check them out. Now, in terms of, I guess, some of the patterns that I see with patients during my day, and certainly some of the situations where people go wrong. Because I often hear people, they'll come to me and they say, I eat very little. You know, I feel like I eat like a bird and I'm still gaining weight, and what is going on? Why is this happening? And that sort of thing. And, you know, after we've kind of checked out and we've certainly looked at all the various components and factors and making sure that there's no hormonal, metabolic abnormalities and that sort of thing, it comes down to kind of just looking at what is the individual eating, what is their activity level, and that sort of thing. Now, there's kind of two groups, I guess, larger overarching groups that I kind of put people into. And the first group, I'm really trying to come up with a better analogy for this. It's really not the greatest, so don't hold me to it. If you have a better idea for this one, I just haven't had enough thinking time to kind of formulate it. But if you have a better idea, definitely give me that shout out. Yeah. Anyways, so kind of the analogy that I use is that one group of people are the people that are kind of blowing themselves up with a grenade, in that they are blowing a calorie deficit and causing a calorie surplus through kind of one big event. And then there's people that are kind of shooting themselves multiple times with a pistol, and ultimately it's causing the blowing of the calorie deficit and going into a calorie surplus in much more smaller kind of bullets, if you will, over a period of time. So what I mean by the people that are kind of doing it with a big event, these tend to be the individuals that Monday through Thursday, they're very strict, they're very tight on their diet, they're maybe eating that 1,200 calories and they're very on point and focused and literally starving themselves and kind of white knuckling it through the week. And then Friday comes along, breakfast is probably okay, lunch might be okay. And then it's, oh, hey, let's go out for drinks after work. Or, hey, why don't we go and have dinner? And why don't we do this? And ultimately, they start with the Friday night dinner. And if they've consumed some alcohol and that sort of thing, it kind of continues into the Saturday, goes on through the Saturday evening, and so on and so forth. And suddenly they've consumed a large amount of calories via processed foods, takeout, restaurant, alcohol, and that sort of thing, that it ultimately negates any kind of calorie deficit that they created during the week. And what's happening here is, biology wise, they've created such a calorie deficit that basically they're starved by the time they come to the weekend, and their brain is so tired and so exhausted and craving of nutrients that ultimately it gets them to make up for those nutrients in a big way. And so if they're going out for, drinks and food and all that kind of stuff, it's going to get them and push them to eat as much as it possibly can, because it's finally getting the opportunity to make up for those nutrients that it didn't get during the week. So that's kind of that group of people. They do well during the week, they bloat on the weekend, and they kind of continue that cycle over and over again, where weekend finishes, come around on Sunday, they feel bad about themselves, they feel disgusted with themselves, they're shaming themselves, and they're like, all right, we're just going to try harder this coming week. And they start it all over again until the Friday, and so on and so forth. Now, depending on how big those events are over the course of the weekend, they may consume a large amount of calories that ultimately over time slowly causes more and more and more gain, and ultimately leads to them gaining weight over a longer period of time. The other big factor that I find with these individuals is there's kind of a struggling point that a lot of people have, where Monday, or they weigh in on Monday and they're a certain weight, and they have an expectation that Thursday, Friday, well, I should be down. And they might be down, 0.2, 0.3, maybe even half a pound, but they're expecting, a pound, 2 pounds, what have you. I mean, I just white knuckled it all week long. Like, I should be down so much weight. And ultimately that causes some disappointment. They haven't reached whatever expectation they have. And that further fuels and kind of puts in that all or nothing mentality of, well, this isn't working. Screw it. I give up. I'm just going to eat whatever I want. And that further triggers and kind of leads them down that rabbit hole. The other people, the ones that are kind of shooting themselves multiple times with a bunch of little bullets, they are the people that are, it's kind of like the small little things that they don't quite realize are causing them to blow a calorie deficit. So on a day-to-day, they might be eating what seems like a low volume of food, but it might be that there isn't many vegetables, or they're using very high calorie dressings, or not really kind of keeping track of the dressings or sauces or different things like that are kind of like the extras that they're just not being mindful of, and they're kind of just piling those on. And those are incrementally causing them to go over on their calorie amounts. They also could be consuming more processed foods, and ultimately, if they think they're consuming a low amount of processed foods and kind of estimating those calories, it's probably a lot more calories than what they're ultimately estimating. And so then that's going to, again, kind of blow that calorie deficit that they had created, and potentially leading to their weight, at the very least, to remain the same or kind of increase over time. Similarly, with this group of people, if they think they're eating very little and they have this mindset, well, I'm eating very little, and again, Monday they weigh in and they step on the scale, Thursday, Friday, and the scale hasn't moved as much or as whatever amount that they think it should have, well, then that again triggers this level of disappointment. That all or nothing mentality kicks in. Why am I bothering? Screw it. And voila, they kind of continue on, and the cycle goes around and around and around. And so there's a lot of complex overlapping different factors and stuff like that between just what our expectations are in terms of how our body should lose weight, how quickly it should lose weight. There's factors with just, not properly tracking and keeping, being mindful about what it is that we're eating and stuff like that. And then there's just also kind of going too much of the extremes and engaging in that all or nothing type mentality and aspect of things. And so this is why it's so important to look at the entire global picture of things to really get a good understanding as to where are the issues and concerning pain points, if you will, and how we can help somebody to kind of start mitigating them, starting to correct them, and just starting to develop a better idea about the expectations that they should expect in their weight loss journey and such like that. But also kind of looking at, if you feel like you're white knuckling it and dying in terms of all the work that you're putting in, well, maybe that method that you're using, it's too much. You're trying to engage and change too many behaviors. You're trying to be too extreme. And so we need to back it off and just start with some smaller tweaks and changes that we can more consistently engage in day after day, week after week, and so on. So it's not a quick and easy solution to get you going in the right track or anything like that, but it kind of will help hopefully bring some perspective and some ideas as to how better to kind of mitigate, to manage it, and that sort of thing. So again, not necessarily as simple as the calories in versus calories out. There's a lot of other complexities and things that are kind of going around it. I would say the only other thing that I often see is this idea, or the aspects of how much activity an individual thinks that they're getting. So humans, again, we're terrible at estimating and guesstimating, and whether it's you're guesstimating your activity or guesstimating the food that you're eating, I can tell you you're guesstimating wrong. It's not any fault of your own. It's just the fact that we as humans are just not designed to do this kind of thing, and we just tend to really suck at it. So not your fault. It's just the way that we are. And so having some way to kind of measure or kind of tracking things is going to make it help your process to be much more manageable and much more able to kind of see and understand where are you going wrong along your journey and stuff. And so with the activity, a lot of us think we're getting a lot more steps in a day than what we actually are. And unfortunately, a lot of people aren't getting nearly enough activity. In fact, we have, I would say, a lack of activity or a lack of movement crisis. I can't remember what it's been called. Basically it's an epidemic in just how little activity people are getting on a day-to-day basis. And so that's going to be a major pain point as well, because the calories that are going out when you even just walk very little or only get a couple thousand steps in a day, your body's going to burn substantially less calories in that day. So your calories that are going to go out are going to be much, much lower. And ultimately, that's going to affect that calories in versus calories out equation of things. So keeping that piece in mind is another big factor and component there. Ultimately, though, working with your care team, understanding what are the intricacies of you as an individual, and really kind of zooming out, taking a big picture view as to what are the changes and things that you're looking at, trying to collect more data and information, because only with that data and information are you going to be able to fully understand what the bigger picture, what the bigger issues are, and ultimately be more successful along your weight journey, but more importantly, along your health journey. So that was a lot of information. Hopefully you kind of got all that. It all made sense. That's what we're going for. But yeah, we will take the questions from the crowd now. So Nellie B, hi from Ireland. Thanks for all your advice. My pleasure, Nellie. Thanks for tuning in from Ireland. It's always really cool to kind of hear people that are tuning in from various parts of the world. Yeah, thanks for checking it out. It must be what, morning in Ireland? Yeah, you guys would be like 7 hours ahead or something like that. It's either very early morning or, yeah, I think it's very early morning. Anyways, Mr. Picklefoot, what's up, Dr. Dan? I have an update. I'm on 5 milligrams of Mounjaro now, and also on Wellbutrin now to manage my anxiety since my previous antidepressants caused weight gain. Awesome. Cool. Well, that's great to hear. I'm glad you're kind of getting the getting all the ducks and ducks in a row and balls all balanced out and everything. And yeah, I mean, good to hear that the Wellbutrin, you got switched over to that one. That's definitely more of a weight neutral, and in some cases can be leading and contributing to weight loss as well. So that is great. Fantastic. Hopefully it works well for you and continues to manage not only the anxiety, but supporting you in your weight management efforts. Talit, when people accuse me of taking the easy way out with Mounjaro, I explained to them that we all have a limited amount of willpower, and as someone with the disease of obesity, why in the world would I want to waste that on fighting food noise? So this is something that's like it's really really unfortunate that this is the argument that people are kind of you know are bringing forward and saying that you're taking the easy way out by utilizing a medication to help you to manage your weight. It's kind of like, I mean, do people wake up one morning and say, I would like to struggle with my weight? I would like to have to go on all of these diets and white knuckle it and stress and worry about food and what I'm eating, and then also be judged and have all this bias and stigma against me. Um, like that is exactly what I woke up one morning and decided to have in my life. Like that just makes so much sense. It's yeah, it's very perplexing. And then saying with all of that struggle that you're taking the easy way out by using a medication. That'd be like you having hypertension and saying, oh, I'm taking the easy way out by using a blood pressure medication, which many components of blood pressure and stuff like that. Same thing with your weight. You can do all of the exactly the right things and all of the prescribed modalities and all this other stuff, and you can still struggle. And so taking that medication would give you the easy way out. I just, yeah, that is, it's a painful process. It's very frustrating. It's very annoying when I hear that kind of train of thought. And yes, I guess having that understanding of I see people every day who are struggling with their weight and are kind of undergoing some of these challenges, and hearing the things on the back end and the stories that people tell me about the environments that they grew up in and even the environments that they're still in. It's no wonder people are struggling with their weight. Like they're literally doing the best that they can with what they have learned, with what they are dealing with, and with the kind of the crapshoot of genetics that they've ultimately been given. That's ultimately affecting their physiology and biology, making this whole process extremely effing challenging. And so, yeah, you're definitely not taking the easy way out. You are literally using a medication to treat a chronic disease. And sorry, but what you do for your health and for you is quite frankly no one's effing business. That has been one thing that's been interesting with the whole COVID vaccine. People were all so like, oh, don't look at my medical records and that's all private and blah blah blah. But yet people will happily tell you how to live your life, how to live a healthier life based on their experience or their ideas of it. And God forbid they find out what medications you're taking. And if you're taking a medication for weight management, suddenly they're all totally okay, interjecting their advice and their ideas to tell you how to live your life. Yet they got up in arms when people were saying, just show me if you have a vaccine or not. Like, yeah, the world today, it sometimes is, it's hard, very, very hard. So, yeah. Anyways, some great questions there, everybody. So, smaller group on today, which I always do appreciate, to everyone that does show up and comes and joins us here for the evening and such. But I think that is where we are going to end and wrap things up tomorrow, or not tomorrow, next week or next Wednesday. We are talking about Christmas, holidays, dealing with the holidays and that sort of thing. What you should be thinking about. There's a lot of stress around, I guess, on both sides of things, of not only like, oh my God, I don't want to come off of, the diet or whatever that I'm following. What if I gain weight and that sort of thing? But also on the flip side of things, dealing with all of various coaches and people who are telling you, well, you should slack off and just enjoy the holidays and blah, blah, blah. Ultimately, it's your choice on how you want to spend it and go about living your holiday and stuff like that. So we're going to talk about some of those kind of, that would be more of a dichotomy in that realm of things next week. That will be my last live of 2023. And then I will be taking a 2-week break to actually take a vacation, believe it or not, for about 2 weeks or so, kind of over the Christmas to New Year's, and then in the first week of January. And then we'll be returning in the new year for 2024. So be sure to tune in next week, 7 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. We will be back here on the Wednesday, and we will be going over all the things. So if you've got any final last questions or what have you, definitely bring them out. Otherwise, we are going to wrap it up for the evening. So have a great night, everybody. Thanks for all the questions, as always, and thank you for the ongoing support. And check me out on my other channels at The Official Dr. Dan, and we will see you next week.